Smart English Podcast.
Let's talk about everything.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Smart English Podcast, where we help you improve your English through natural and meaningful conversations. And today, we are going to talk about something very powerful and life-changing, which is self-discipline.
Hi, everyone. We are so happy you are here with us today because this topic is not only important for learning English, but also important for achieving goals and building a successful and balanced life.
Before we begin, let me introduce my wonderful co-host, Brian, who always brings practical ideas and honest thoughts into our discussions.
Thank you, Jessica. That was a very kind introduction. And of course, I am here with Jessica, who always explains things clearly and makes serious topics feel simple and motivating.
Thank you, Brian. And now, let us begin with a simple question. What does self-discipline actually mean?
In simple words, self-discipline means controlling yourself, especially when you do not feel motivated and choosing to do what is important instead of what is easy or comfortable.
Yes, it means doing your homework even when you feel tired, waking up early even when your bed feels warm and comfortable, and practicing English even when you want to scroll on your phone.
That last example feels very real because sometimes our phones are the biggest test of our self-discipline.
That is absolutely true, because it is very easy to say, I will only check my phone for 5 minutes, and suddenly 30 minutes have passed without us realizing it.
Yes, and that is exactly where self-discipline becomes important because it helps us stay focused on our long-term goals instead of short-term distractions.
Curious and thoughtful. Brian, do you think self-discipline is something we are born with, or is it something we can learn and develop over time?
I strongly believe that self-discipline is a skill, which means anyone can improve it with practice, patience, and small daily habits.
That's great news for our listeners, because it means you do not have to feel bad if you think you are not very disciplined right now, since you can always improve step by step.
Exactly. And the key is to start small, because if you try to change everything at once, you might feel overwhelmed and give up quickly.
For example, if you want to improve your English, instead of studying for 3 hours one day and then stopping for a week, you can study for 20 minutes every day consistently.
Yes, consistency is more powerful than intensity because small actions repeated every day create big results over time.
That idea sounds simple, but it requires discipline to continue even when you do not see immediate results.
That is the difficult part, because we live in a world where we want quick success, but real growth takes time and steady effort.
Curious and reflective. Have you ever experienced a time in your life when self-discipline helped you achieve something important?
Yes, I remember when I decided to wake up earlier every morning to exercise, and at first it was very difficult because I felt sleepy and unmotivated. But after a few weeks, it became a habit, and I felt healthier and more confident.
That's a great example because it shows that discipline feels uncomfortable in the beginning, but later it becomes part of your routine.
Exactly. And once it becomes a habit, you don't need to force yourself so much anymore.
That's an important message for our listeners because the hardest part is often the beginning, and if you can survive the first few weeks, it becomes much easier.
Yes, and remember that discipline is not about being perfect because everyone has days when they feel tired or make mistakes.
Gentle and understanding. What matters is that you do not quit completely when you have a bad day, but instead you continue the next day with a positive mindset.
Serious, but kind. I also think self-discipline is closely connected to self-respect because when you keep your promises to yourself, you start trusting yourself more.
That's a very powerful point because when you say, I will practice English every day, and you actually do it, you feel proud and confident.
And that confidence pushes you to achieve even bigger goals.
So, self-discipline is not just about control, but also about building a stronger and more reliable version of yourself.
Yes, and that journey takes time, patience, and self-kindness.
In the next part, we can talk about practical strategies to build self-discipline in daily life, especially for students and English learners who want to improve step by step.
That sounds great, because practical steps can help turn ideas into real action.
Warm and positive. So stay with us as we continue exploring how self-discipline can transform your learning and your life. In this part, let us talk about practical ways to build self-discipline in daily life, because understanding the idea is helpful, but applying it step by step is what truly creates change.
Yes, and one of the most effective strategies is to create a clear and simple routine. Because when you decide in advance what you will do and when you will do it, you reduce the chance of making excuses later.
That makes sense, because if you say, I will study English sometime today, your brain might delay it again and again. But if you say, I will study at 7 p.m. for 20 minutes, it becomes more specific and realistic.
Exactly, and specific plans reduce confusion, which makes discipline easier to practice.
Another important strategy is removing distractions before you start working, because it is much easier to stay disciplined when temptations are not directly in front of you.
Yes, if your phone is next to you while you are studying, it almost feels like it is calling your name.
That is very true, so sometimes the simplest solution is to put your phone in another room or turn off notifications while you focus on your task.
Small actions like that may seem simple, but they make a big difference in protecting your concentration.
Curious, Brian, what do you think about motivation? Because many people say they wait to feel motivated before starting something important.
I believe motivation is helpful, but it is not reliable, because some days you feel excited and energetic, and other days you feel tired and lazy.
That is very true. So if we depend only on motivation, we will be productive only on good days and unproductive on difficult days.
That is why discipline is more powerful than motivation, because discipline means you act even when you do not feel excited.
That idea may sound strict, but it actually gives freedom, because when you complete your important tasks early, you can relax later without guilt.
Yes, and that feeling of finishing something important is very satisfying, because you know you kept your promise to yourself.
Another helpful method is setting small goals instead of very big ones, because large goals can feel overwhelming and make us avoid starting.
Exactly. For example, instead of saying, I will become fluent in English in 3 months, you can say, I will learn 5 new words every day.
Small goals create small wins, and small wins build confidence and momentum.
And when you feel progress, even small progress, your brain feels rewarded and becomes more willing to continue.
That shows how discipline and psychology work together, because we need both structure and encouragement.
Yes, discipline does not mean being harsh with yourself, but it means guiding yourself in a smart and balanced way.
Curious, what should someone do if they fail or break their routine? Because many people lose discipline after one mistake.
I think the most important thing is to avoid negative self-talk, because saying, I am lazy and I will never change, only makes the situation worse.
Instead, you can say, I had a difficult day, but tomorrow I will try again, because that mindset keeps the journey alive.
Discipline grows stronger when we forgive ourselves and continue, not when we criticize ourselves and quit.
That is such an important message, because improvement is not a straight line and everyone has ups and downs.
Yes, and sometimes the real discipline is choosing to continue after a setback.
For our listeners, here's a small challenge. Choose one simple habit you want to improve this week, such as reading for 10 minutes daily or practicing English speaking for 5 minutes.
Write it down, choose a specific time, remove distractions, and try to follow it consistently for 7 days.
After 1 week, observe how you feel, because even small discipline can increase your confidence and self-respect.
Remember that discipline is like a muscle, and the more you train it with small actions, the stronger it becomes over time.
In the next part, we can explore the deeper benefits of self-discipline and how it can transform not only learning, but also relationships and personal growth.
Yes, because discipline is not only about success, but also about building a strong character in a meaningful life.
Okay, Brian, let us be honest for a moment, because we've been talking about self-discipline in a very serious way, but in real life, it is not always so perfect and organized, right?
Absolutely not. Because sometimes self-discipline looks like waking up early with confidence, and other times it looks like hitting the snooze button 3 times and pretending you did not hear the alarm.
3 times only? That sounds very disciplined, actually.
Okay, maybe 5 times, but who's counting?
This is a safe space, Brian. You can tell the truth.
Fine. Sometimes I even turn off the alarm and then convince myself that resting is very important for productivity.
I think we have all created very creative excuses like that, because our brain can be extremely intelligent when it wants to avoid hard work.
Yes, suddenly we become professional lawyers, defending our laziness with very strong arguments.
Exactly. We say things like, I deserve a break, even though we have not started anything yet.
But this is actually where self-awareness becomes important, because we need to notice when we're making excuses instead of progress.
That is true, and I think it helps to ask yourself a simple question like, will my future self thank me for this decision?
Ooh, I like that question, because usually the future version of us wants us to study, exercise, or finish the project, not scroll through social media for an hour.
Yes, my future self is probably tired of waiting for me to be more disciplined.
I imagine my future self standing there with crossed arms saying, "Really? Another episode instead of studying?"
That mental image is actually very motivating.
You know, I think many people misunderstand discipline and think it means living a boring life without fun.
That is such a common misunderstanding because discipline is not about removing joy, it's about managing time so you can enjoy things without guilt.
Exactly. Because when you finish your important tasks first, watching a movie later feels much better and more relaxing.
Yes, it feels like a reward instead of an escape.
That is a very good way to describe it.
Curious, Brian, do you think environment plays a big role in discipline?
Definitely. Because if your desk is messy and your phone keeps lighting up every few seconds, it becomes very hard to stay focused.
My desk sometimes looks like a creative storm passed through it.
That sounds artistic, but maybe not very productive.
Yes, so sometimes cleaning your workspace is actually the first step of self-discipline.
I completely agree, because a clean and organized space sends a message to your brain that it's time to work seriously.
I also think discipline is connected to identity, because when you start telling yourself, I am a disciplined person, your actions slowly begin to match that belief.
That is powerful, because instead of saying I am lazy, which limits you, you can say I am learning to be more disciplined, which gives space for growth.
Yes, language matters a lot, especially the way we speak to ourselves in our own minds.
Sometimes our inner voice is more dramatic than any movie character.
That is so true, and sometimes it needs to relax a little.
At the end of the day, discipline is not about being perfect every single day, but about showing up most days and trying again when you fail.
Yes, and I think it's important to celebrate small victories, like completing your study session even when you didn't feel like it.
Those small victories build confidence, and confidence makes discipline easier next time.
So maybe self-discipline is not a strict teacher, but more like a supportive coach who pushes you gently but consistently.
I like that image much better than a strict teacher with a loud voice.
Yes, we prefer encouragement over shouting.
And to everyone listening, remember that discipline grows slowly, and even one small discipline action today is better than none.
Keep practicing, keep learning, and be patient with yourself, because progress may be slow, but it's always meaningful. You know, Brian, the more we talk about self-discipline, the more I realize that it is not really about controlling every second of your life, but about making small daily decisions that slowly shape who you become over time. And when I think about it that way, it feels much more realistic and much less overwhelming than trying to change everything in one big dramatic step.
I completely agree with that perspective because many people imagine discipline as something very strict and uncomfortable, but in reality, it is often quiet and simple, like choosing to start your work on time or deciding to practice English for a short period, even when you do not feel fully motivated.
Yes, and I have personally noticed that when I complete even one small task that I promised myself I would do, I feel a sense of inner satisfaction that stays with me throughout the day, and that feeling is much stronger than the temporary comfort of avoiding the task.
That inner satisfaction is very powerful because it builds trust between you and yourself. And when you trust yourself, you begin to feel more confident in setting bigger goals and actually working toward them step by step.
But let me ask you something honestly. Do you ever struggle with discipline when you feel mentally tired, even if you know what you should be doing?
Oh, absolutely. Especially on days when my energy is low and my brain keeps suggesting easier activities. And I sometimes have to negotiate with myself, like I'm having a serious meeting inside my head.
I understand that completely, because sometimes my mind creates very logical excuses that sound intelligent, like saying I will work better later in the evening, even though I know I am simply delaying the task.
Yes, and that is why I try to make my goals smaller on difficult days. Because instead of saying, I will work for 1 hour, I might say, I will work for just 10 minutes. And once I start, it often becomes easier to continue.
That is such a practical strategy, because starting is usually the hardest part, and once we begin, our resistance slowly decreases and momentum starts to build naturally.
I also believe that discipline becomes easier when we connect our actions to a bigger purpose. Because if we only focus on the effort, it feels heavy. But if we focus on the reason behind it, the effort feels meaningful.
That is very true, because when someone studies English just to complete an assignment, they might feel bored, but when they study because they want to communicate confidently with people around the world, the same activity feels more inspiring.
And when you remember your long-term vision, it becomes easier to accept short-term discomfort because you understand that the small daily efforts is building something valuable for your future.
I like to imagine that each disciplined action is like placing one small brick in the construction of my future life. And even though one brick seems small, over time they create something strong and stable.
That is a beautiful image because it shows that discipline is not dramatic or loud, but steady and patient.
Curious, what do you think about balancing discipline with flexibility? Because sometimes people feel guilty if they change their plans or take a break.
I think flexibility is actually part of healthy discipline because life is unpredictable, and sometimes adjusting your plan shows maturity rather than weakness, as long as you do not completely abandon your goals.
That makes sense, because discipline should support your life, not make you feel trapped or stressed all the time.
Exactly. And when discipline is combined with self-understanding and patience, it becomes sustainable instead of exhausting.
So maybe the real goal is not to become perfectly disciplined overnight, but to become slightly more consistent and slightly more aware every single day.
Yes, and even if progress feels slow, it is still progress. And those small improvements quietly shape your habits, your confidence, and eventually your results.
Encouraging, and in our next discussion, we can explore how discipline influences other areas of life, such as relationships, career growth, and emotional strength, because its impact goes beyond daily routines.
That sounds like an important direction to continue, because self-discipline truly touches every part of personal development.
As we continue this conversation, I think it is important to talk about how self-discipline affects not only our goals, but also our relationships, because the way we manage ourselves often influences the way we treat other people.
That is a very interesting point because when you are disciplined with your time and responsibilities, you're more likely to keep promises, arrive on time, and show respect for other people's schedules and feelings.
Yes, and something as simple as replying to messages on time or completing shared tasks shows reliability, and reliability builds trust, which is one of the most important foundations of any strong relationship.
I completely agree, because discipline in communication, like listening carefully instead of interrupting or reacting emotionally, can prevent many misunderstandings.
That reminds me that emotional discipline is just as important as time management because controlling our reactions during stressful moments can protect relationships from unnecessary damage.
That is true, and I admit that emotional discipline is sometimes more difficult than waking up early or finishing a task because it requires patience and self-awareness in the middle of strong feelings.
Yes, especially when you are tired or stressed and someone says something that easily irritates you and you have to choose between reacting immediately or taking a deep breath first.
Taking that deep breath can feel like the longest 3 seconds of your life, but it can also save you from saying something you regret later.
Curious how you think self-discipline affects career growth and success in the long term.
I believe discipline is one of the main reasons some people achieve steady progress in their careers because they consistently improve their skills, meet deadlines, and continue learning even when no one is watching them.
That is very true because success often looks sudden from the outside, but behind it there are usually years of small disciplined actions that nobody noticed.
Exactly. And when you build a reputation as someone who is dependable and consistent, opportunities naturally start to come your way.
It is interesting how self-discipline may feel boring in the short term, but in the long term it creates freedom, stability, and confidence.
Yes, it's almost like doing something slightly uncomfortable today so that your future self can live more comfortably tomorrow.
For our listeners, I hope this discussion shows that self-discipline is not about being strict or perfect, but about building a strong foundation for your dreams, your relationships, and your personal growth.
And remember that discipline does not mean you never fail, because even disciplined people have difficult days, but the difference is that they choose to continue instead of quitting completely.
Start small. Stay consistent, forgive yourself when you make mistakes, and keep moving forward one step at a time.
Whether your goal is improving English, building a healthier lifestyle, or developing a new skill, discipline will quietly guide you toward progress if you practice it daily.
We are truly proud of you for listening, learning, and investing in your personal development, because that itself is already an act of self-discipline.
Thank you so much for joining us in this episode and reflecting deeply on this powerful topic with us.
Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and remember that small, disciplined actions today create strong results tomorrow.
We'll see you in the next episode of the Smart English Podcast. Until then, take care and stay consistent.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more English learning videos. See you in the next episode.